a breakout on what is happening for Dixon Tech. But with that, let's welcome in our guest for today, Rajesh Agarwal, Head of Research of AUM Capital, joins us. Hi Rajesh, Dixon Tech is the standout stock in trade today. It's down over 13%, and it's not the numbers which are a concern, but it's foray in the semiconductor space. As my colleague Puneet was talking about, the higher capex number, 25,000 crore is the total capex estimated, of which 8,000 crore is what is Dixon's share going to be. What do you make of these developments? Are the valuations too expensive? Because we are seeing a rub-off effect on Keynes also, which is planning on a similar strategy going forward.
Good afternoon, Anish. You said it right. The numbers were pretty good. In line with market expectation, I would say. Although the growth was slower, but we saw revenue growing by good numbers, bottom line growing by good numbers, margins were okayish. Even the mobile business, which contributed 67% in the previous quarter, has been gone up to 89% of the revenue in this quarter. Everything was going for good. They have made a recent JV with Vivo in December to enter into display fab manufacturing. These things are good, but the foray into semiconductor, which would require a huge capex, and the numbers would come, as your colleague said, from 2030 onward. There's a long gestation period, at least 4-5 years down the line. And not to forget the kind of valuation it's still trading at 3-digit P. I think there is very little scope from these levels for a meaningful upside from these levels. Although there might be a bounce back because of the kind of cut which we have seen today, but for investment purpose, it's avoid at this point of time. Let the valuation cool down a little bit, then we can give a buy call. But at this point of time, it's a avoid.
Okay, a definite avoid with valuations remaining as a concern. But moving on to the next theme and focus is the swearing in of Donald Trump as 47th President of the United States. Now, there is a high chance that the tariff on solar modules will take place. How will this impact the solar markets in the domestic space is something that Mihika will be sharing with us. Mihika, over to you. What can you tell us about this?
The Trump administration has pledged a lot in regard to the U.S. energy sector. They are giving more focus to drilling, less focus on clean energy, and there are talks about changes to the Inflation Reduction Act. And several policy changes could impact the solar module makers in India, like Warrior Energies and Premier Energies. Now, the current status is most of India's solar module exports are going to the U.S., and this share has been rising for the last 1 to 2 years. Now, I'll divide the possible impact on the two companies in 3 different scenarios. Scenario 1 includes an imposition of tariffs by the US on solar imports and a reduction in the IRA or Inflation Reduction Act incentives. And these incentives were offered to US-based producers via tax credits in an aim to boost the US solar industry. But the impact of these two moves could be negative for Warrior Energies and Premier Energies as per Axis Securities. Potential scenario number 2 includes no change in IRA incentives and no imposition of solar import tariffs by the US, and this is a scenario that will be most beneficial for Warrior Energies and Premier Energies. And the last scenario is no change in IRA incentives, but an increase in import tariffs for solar modules by the US. This would be initially negative for Warrior Energies and Premier Energies, as exports from India will be less viable in this scenario, but it would be beneficial for these companies in the medium term because they are setting up US plants locally in the United States, and the higher possible module prices in the US could benefit these companies.
Well, thanks for that, Mihika. Rajesh, coming to you on these solar module makers, Warrior and Premier Energies in focus. Now, of the 3 scenarios, what do you see about the Trump swearing in and now him being the president? What does this mean for the company's path going forward? And even on a fundamental basis, what is your take on these companies based on how they have been performing?
See, there is no doubt that solar and all these energy companies are going to be there for the long term. But in short term, there may be some kind of blips because of the kind of news flow which we are witnessing. Yesterday only, we came to know that Mr. Trump, as expected, has said that his focus would be on fossil fuels, and that's a negative for the entire renewable energy space as such, I would say. Major producers of modules like Wari or Premier would be get impacted in the short term because more because of sentiments rather than because of fundamentals. because apart from US, there are other countries where they export. So I think these kind of drop in stocks may be vary going down to around 24, 2500 or a premier going to around 1050 odd levels would be good levels to accumulate. We would wait for some amount of more correction going in these two stocks before adding.
Okay, so accumulation and wait and watch is the approach that Rajesh has. But thank you so much, Rajesh, for joining in and sharing your perspective on some of the key stocks and what's the way forward for them.